friends. You're listening to Draws in Spanish. I'm your host, Fabiola. I'm an illustrator and podcaster based in Philadelphia. On Draws in Spanish, I chat with Latinx visual artists and designers to discuss everything from their identity and culture to their creative process and work. Today on the show, I have lettering artist, illustrator, and designer Carlos Oliveras Colom. Carlos is a queer artist that was born on the Caribbean island of Puerto Rico and brings to life letters and illustrations that are just fuller than life. His expressive style is meant to be seen but also felt. His work is rooted in equality and the desire to represent the underdogs while also exploring his passion for colors and shapes across different mediums. Before we get started, remember that you can watch this episode over on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/FabiolitaDraws to watch this episode. Plus, remember you can join the free Draws in Spanish Discord to connect with other Latinx artists. All of those things will be linked in the show notes so you can access them super quickly. Now keep on listening to hear us talk about why he chose to leave Puerto Rico, if he thinks art school is worth it, and how his personal projects have fueled his freelance career. Okay, let's get into today's show. Welcome to the show, Carlos. How are you doing today? Are you ready?
I am ready for this.
Yes, thanks for being here with me. I know you're based in Fort Worth, Texas, according to everything I've read about you online right now, but you were born and raised in Puerto Rico. So right off the bat, how did you end up in Fort Worth, Texas? Give us a little bit of context.
Yeah, it's been a long, wild ride. So I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born and raised there. Then I moved to Florida to study. That's where I went to college. Then I moved to California to start my career as a designer. That's where everything got kicked off, and I spent many years there. In 2011, I wanted to be a little bit closer to my family and just being able to visit Puerto Rico more frequently. So part of my family lives in Fort Worth. So I'm close to them, and I'm also closer to the people in Puerto Rico.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So what's it like for you being Puerto Rican in Texas? Give me a little bit there, because I know that there's a lot of a huge Mexican population in Texas just by proximity. But what's it like with the Puerto Rican people in Texas? Are there a lot? How are you feeling about it?
I think I am still figuring that out. I know my family's here, and I've seen some Puerto Ricans around, but I work from home, so I'm usually at home. So I'm in contact with society very little.
Me too. In that sense, I very much feel you.
Sometimes I would just rather stay working inside, just in my projects, my art, and all that stuff. But I'm sure everyone's good around here.
How long have you been now in Fort Worth, Texas? Because you've moved around a lot, so I'm just wondering how long you've been there.
I have been in Fort Worth. I moved at the beginning of 2022. So not that long. So maybe like a year.
Do you feel like you are building up a sense of community there, or do you still feel like a little work from home loner?
I am a loner. I think in California and here, I was a loner, and I don't know how to get out of the States. Out of that state of mind.
Do you want to get out of that state of mind? Because sometimes it's nice to. So I'm just like, let's talk about it, because I haven't had a chance really to talk to someone about that sensation of when you work from home and you just moved somewhere new. It's kind of a funny experience because you don't really know what's out there. So you're not really missing out on that much. But it also like makes you stay home more because you don't know anyone.
You know, I try to go out as much as I can, and I've been trying to get out there, but it's not that easy. I feel like making friends as an adult is very complicated. It's tricky. So sometimes I just want to be in my comfort zone.
I actually have a question for you that is kind of a silly question. Where did you come up with the name Don Carlos? Because obviously I know what Don means and all of this, but my first association with Don Carlos is, someone mayor, someone older. It kind of surprised me that you're kind of taking this term and putting your own spin on it. And also the only association I have, I think maybe, is Don Francisco. So I'm like, wow, wow, this is amazing. Like, where did he get this from? You know, that kind of thing. So can you expand on this, on why you chose this name?
I think, I wanted something that was Latin rooted, because like if I wanted to do Carlos online, like I'm never going to get Carlos online because there's thousands, millions of them out there. So I was like, I need something to bring my heritage to it. So I went with Don, but it actually all rooted from a project I did in college. So in college, I was already interested in typography, but I didn't really take any course in typography or like hand lettering. So one of my senior projects, I decided I wanted to do some typography, and I set myself like, oh, for Valentine's Day, I want to create a series of posts that are typographic and lettered and whatnot. But I was shy to do it as myself because it was my first time trying it for reals. So I wanted to create a persona where I could just blame it on them if it flopped, basically.
A little bit of a safety net.
Yeah, safety net. So back then I was called El Don Carlos, the Latin lover, because it was all around Valentine's Day, and I wanted to be kind of lovey and naughty and all those kind of stuff.
Sexy.
Yeah, very sexy. I remember I lettered the word "stay kinky" or something like that, and my teacher was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "I love it though.
This is me."
This is me. Leave me alone. It was like a sticky type. I don't know. It was very sticky and bondagey black type. I don't know. I had fun. So yeah, I think I wanted to keep that essence of the Latin flavor, the humor, and kind of just updating, I guess, the word Don to mean something else, something different. And Don, I think, also means like respect, or like, when you say it to your elders. So I was like, I feel like Don Carlos, and and it kind of stuck. And right now, my Instagram, so I have Don Carlos with 3 R's.
Yes.
It's very important because the 3 R's is how we roll our R's in Spanish. Don Carlos was not available, so I had to include something else.
And you were like, okay, let's double down on these R's or triple down on these R's. I love it. And I know when we were emailing, that's how you signed your name. And I was like, hold on, did I get his name wrong? Like, what is, because I am very sensitive to that as someone who, people get my name wrong all the time. So I always want to be really mindful of this. And I was like, hold on. Does he spell his name with 3 R's for real? It's like, okay, we're doing it. But I love it. I love that you're owning it. And I really love that you're giving like the word Don like a new, fresh life. That it doesn't have to be just for like the random grandpa that you see at the store, that whose name maybe you don't remember anymore.
Maybe I'll become one of those someday.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it embroidered on your work coats and stuff like that. Do you think that going to a prestigious art school and going for like a big name is worth it for the long-term success of your creative career? Like how much do you think that weighs in nowadays?
I think nowadays it doesn't really matter. It hasn't gotten me anywhere. I think in the beginning, maybe it helped me get started, get my foot in the door. Companies recruited big schools where their alumni studied at and whatnot. So like that's how I got my first internship. It was through like alumni's coming to recruit at the school, and that's how I interviewed with a lot of big companies. So that was a great advantage. I didn't have to like go out there and go into the endless deep of
into the abyss of by yourself.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for that. That was good. But after that, it hasn't really been anything that crazy. It's cool to meet people from Ringling when I like have gone into other companies, but it hasn't really brought me any other benefits. I had great teachers. They pushed me. I didn't really understand many things that were going on at that time, but through time I was like, oh, I kind of get what Edwin was saying. I get what Polly was saying.
Right. It hits you slowly, I guess.
Yeah, slowly when you're out in the world. I think the name hasn't really like brought much.
It's more so your own
Yeah.
work.
I think it usually is all about your work. If you do great work, that's what's gonna get you other places. But the school of where you studied, at some point, it won't even matter. It's just gonna be very little in your resume.
It's just another line on your resume.
Just another line.
So, be mindful of how much you're willing to pay for it. Obviously, having a great education builds an amazing foundation. So that it matters. It's not like it doesn't matter. But, you also have to consider the full story here, especially when it comes to what you're setting yourself up for long term. And I think that's what you're getting at here. And I fully agree with you. I mean, I went to University of Florida, which is a state school, and it's not cheap by any means. It's still expensive, but it's a state school, so it has different things going on in terms of finances. And I know a lot of people went to that art school as opposed to some of the bigger art schools that are in Florida, like Full Sail and Ringling and all of that. So there's definitely lots of ways to pursue higher education in the arts. And I think it's a good thing. I think, like you're saying, it's a good thing to go get a formal education. I wanted to ask you, so you went from Puerto Rico island to Florida, to Sarasota, Florida, which is interesting. So can you tell me like how the cultural change was for you? If there was any culture shock, how did you feel about it? I mean, Florida is close, but it's still, I imagine, a bit different than Puerto Rico.
It is a lot different. When I went to Florida, my English I knew English, but I didn't really practice it when I was back home, even though I went to a bilingual school. So there was a disconnect when I had to speak English. Like there was a lag. I had to think about it and then speak it. So it was tricky. When I first researched Ringling, I was like, I need to find something that people speak Spanish here so I can convince my parents that I can go. And I found this recruitment video of someone that spoke Spanish, and I was like, look, you can see it. They speak Spanish. I think language was definitely one of the first things that it was a culture shock. I think after it was I'm alone here. I need to make my way by myself and just figure things out. So that is hard, considering that I used to have help from my mom, my parents for everything. Now it's I'm living on my own. I need to get groceries, cook, and all this stuff. So that was tricky. I had a school meal plan at some point, and I didn't eat any of the things that they served. It was very, very hard for me to eat. I was like,
yeah, I could have told you that. I could have told you, don't get that meal plan.
This is another day of eating a burger because I don't want to eat whatever they're serving. So then I started gaining weight. I think now I have a better palate.
What was the food that you were used to, that you were expecting? Because there's listeners that don't know, Puerto Rican food. So be specific.
Puerto Rican food is flavorful. It has many levels. When you eat it, it's warm. It's crunchy. It's it's good. There's a lot of food that I had at my school that were just, or it's just a little bit sloppy or flavorless.
Was that your first exposure to like American food? Because it just sounds like American food. I mean, it's American food, but then at a school, so it's like a little bit less good.
Yeah. So I feel like, in Puerto Rico, we're pretty Americanized in a way, but our food is our food. Our food is our food. Yeah. There's all kinds of food there, but our food is bomb. I think when I got to college, it was the first time that I was like, oh, I have to like accustom to food as well. And I didn't have a great time. I ate a lot of cookies though. I was like, I don't like the food today, but I'll eat a cookie.
Yeah, I see what you're saying here. And was there anything else about being in Sarasota that was a culture shock for you?
I think I was in a very specific situation because Ringling attracts a lot of international students. So I was surrounded by like something I had never been surrounded by. I was like, I am getting cultures heat left and right from everywhere. And I was just like, this is beautiful because I'm getting to experience and learn from people from everywhere. So that experience, I would not change at all. Like that, I love that. Just because, I met people from everywhere. And being from a little island, I was just like always so surprised and like just wonder. I was like just amazed by like all the people and like the talent that they brought with them. So it was really cool. I think, other things in Florida was like, you have to drive everywhere that you go. I didn't have a car, so it was very hard to get around. I barely got out or like left the school unless it was like a field trip from the school or like I got a friend to like drive me around. If not, I would be doing groceries on my longboard or my bike. I would pack on with I would pack my backpack full of groceries and then head back to school.
Do you feel like you always wanted to move to the US? Like what was the appeal for you instead of staying in Puerto Rico?
This may be a little bit selfish or just, maybe it's just...
Or the reality.
Or reality or a dream. But I really wanted to become, a great designer and I wanted to be respected. So maybe that's like why I was like striving to like go to Ringling because it has its prestige. So it's like, oh, I'm a designer that came from Ringling, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I don't even mention the school anymore just because like it's more about what you have in you and where you're willing to go with your creative side. I think when you're in high school, it may be hard to like arrive to these conclusions. But I think through time, you'll know, like, just trust yourself, do whatever feels good for you. And also just don't stop exploring. Don't stop like trying new things out. I still watch tutorials. Like I watch so many tutorials like on how to do things just because like, I won't go to school for it because it's expensive. But I'll YouTube it. So yeah, I'm still learning.
Yeah, you wanted to leave Puerto Rico for something a little bit bigger, dream a little bit bigger, which I think is a totally acceptable answer and makes a lot of sense. Since your time at Ringling, though, you've done a lot of work as a designer, and I know now you're a lead brand designer over at Plenty, which is a really fun brand, and they've been really, I've seen them a lot in the kind of design world. So tell me about how you ended up there, about your professional design experience, because that is a bit different than your personal creative projects. And I like to talk about it because I think a lot of people think it's one or the other, and you can do both.
You can totally do both, or three things, different things, whatever you want, all at the same time. Just manage yourself, which is hard.
Yeah, just be like we said, we're both work from home loners. That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. You don't do anything else. I don't have a life. I am satisfied because like I've learned that I I just have a drive, something that drives me that I can't stop. And I'm like, I need to try this. I need to do this. I want to try this other thing. I want to like do something else. I am satisfied that I get to do the things I want for myself, not for anyone else. But yeah, my professional life. So I can go down my history. So I started working in California. That's when I moved.
And I wanted to point out that was your dream, was to be a designer in California, and you did it. Yes.
Yeah. So I interviewed with a couple of people that I was like wanting to go with, but fate just brought me to California. At that point, I was working on a very big project that I didn't have enough time to like interview with companies like as many other people were doing in my class. I was actually doing a recruitment book for Ringling, the one that brought me initially to the school. So I was making my own version of my year. So it was a really big project. Anyways, so I was recruited by Jib Jab Studios. They're a studio in California. And I was like, oh my God, this is my chance to go to California. So my little dream was becoming reality, and it was really hard. I think that month after graduating was a moment in time where I learned so much about myself and so much about like life in general. I was like, I am actually starting life right now.
Yeah, it's like you're coming out of the nest, right? Because college is like the design nest.
It was really hard. I had like $4,000 in savings. I was like, I need to make this happen. When I moved to California, I couldn't find an apartment because they wouldn't rent to someone who didn't have credit. I didn't have credit because I was a student. I didn't have a credit card.
Oh no!
I ended up like trying to find an apartment for so long, and I was just blowing my savings in hotels or like very, very cheap hotels because I couldn't find somewhere to rent. I ended up living in the weirdest places that would rent me. This
is a little PSA that if you're 18, you should start building your credit. Even when you're 16, you can start building your credit with your parents' credit. They can help you start building your credit. So, because it's really important once you try and be more independent. I've been there myself, and that's why I'm like, man. Well, you wouldn't know if you didn't use it in Puerto Rico, you know? Time for a quick little break to remind you that you can listen or watch an extra long version of this exact episode with Carlos by joining the Draws in Spanish Patreon. On the Patreon, I share monthly personal podcast episodes where I share about my own personal career, but I also share extended podcast episodes of all the episodes in season 2. So if you've been craving a little bit more detail from the guest, maybe some juicy bits, some things that just, we talk about more conversationally in a little more of a relaxed vibe because it's a bit less edited, so you get a real feel for the conversation, then head on over to our Patreon. So go to patreon.com/drawsinspanish to become a patron and check out all those extra Patreon perks like extended podcast episodes. Thanks again, and now let's get back into today's show.
Yeah, so it was very hard for me to like find a place to live to like start my life in California. But once that happened, I worked at Jib Jab. I worked for Radio Disney. Then I moved to advertising agency called TBWA Media Arts Lab, where they do work for Apple. I was there for 3 years. And then I worked for Snapchat and all these companies. I did really cool stuff that I had never could imagine that I would get to do. They taught me a lot. They stressed me a lot. I cried a lot internally.
Or externally, no.
I've been working at Plenty for 3.5 years now. A lot of people know Plenty by the work that Ann Walsh helped us do, but I've been there before that. So I saw and helped the brand from what it used to be and what it is now. I've been a key part of the design part of what Plenty is now. So I'm very grateful that I've been able to work there with our creative director, Bryden. And, you know, it's been a wild ride. It's not what I expected when I arrived to California. It is not what I dreamed of, but I am glad I'm here. It's been a better journey for me. And I started doing entertainment and then advertising, and now I'm at a startup. So it's been an interesting succession to like my career was meant to happen. When I moved to California, I was like, I want to work for like a surfing company or like a skateboarding company, because like I love that culture and like what that culture entails. And I feel like when I was young, I was fed all these surfing and skateboarding brands. So I was like, I want to be part of that. Like, I want to design for Volcom or Quicksilver or Hurley or like all that stuff. So that was a dream. Didn't happen, but I am okay with that because I got it to accomplish other stuff.
Yeah, it took you on a different path. What do you think are the benefits of working on a design team? Because you work as a full-time designer, like you were saying over at Plenty, but you also create your own work and you've done a ton of other work on your own. So what are the benefits of working on a design team versus being a freelancer?
In a design team, it varies. Depends your team. Depends the type of company, the size of your team. I've worked in companies where I am like one of 30 or like 30 designers, or like I am one of 2 designers.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you this question, because I know you have experience in different industries, which I'm assuming is different size teams and all of that.
Right now at Plenty, I've become a lead because I've been there for a long time, and also just because we're a small team. So it's been interesting. It gives you perspective. The more you do it, the more you kind of start understanding how things work. I think having a team is good just because you can bounce off stuff, ideas, and just kind of better yourself, better the project that you're working on. A team of some sort is always helpful. As a freelancer, I think I'm not the typical freelancer, because it's been more like I get reached out for a project that someone likes my work, they reach out to me. So I'm kind of working in their team. So I become part of their team in a way, but I still get my personal space and I get to do my own thing, which has been beneficial and just kind of a blessing, to be honest. I get to do what I want to do. I get to do fun work, and I am not super involved in like all the drama that sometimes happens in a team.
Yes, and the politics of a company.
Yeah, so I think I enjoy that just because I just get to do what I want to do and sort of like what I'm tasked to do, and which is usually fun stuff. It's also kind of fun to have some variety in your day, just because I get to do really fun work and some other work that it's a little bit more technical.
Would you recommend for a new grad to go into a company or go be a freelancer? Like go work for others, whether it's an agency or a brand, or go be a freelancer? Because I think the dream for people is to always be a freelancer. But I think there's a lot of power in going to work at a brand. So where do you stand on it as someone who's done both?
I would totally have someone go to a company.
That's the advice I was hoping for.
In a company, you build a structure, a base of like how you actually work with the team. You need to be good about deadlines and about working with a team. I think it is essential that every designer works at a company, at least, I mean, not for the whole career if they don't want to, but like there's so many things that are learned in the back end when you're at a company, especially from production or like art direction or coming with ideas. I think it's essential.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned for fresh grads to go to brands or to companies. I think something that's often overlooked, because the dream is to be like an independent designer, that people just hit you up for your work and you don't work for anybody. That's kind of like the dream everyone's going for, I think, especially now with social media. But there's so much to be learned going into a corporate structure, being a part of a team, knowing your place, even soft skills like emailing, file organization, knowing how to act in a meeting. And there's a lot of little nuances there, especially I feel like when you're Latino going into these work environments, like knowing how to handle yourself. There's a lot of things that you have to learn. And I think sometimes if your parents, let's say, or somebody else in your family, if you're the first generation to be kind of doing this white collar work, you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to navigate these spaces. And there's a lot to be learned there, which I think sometimes people just assume you're going to be good at it, and there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. Also, touching on something you mentioned, you kind of like need to learn how to behave in a company, and kind of how to like navigate with other people. I feel like sometimes people think it's okay that the way you live your life at home, it's okay to have it at work. And that's solely not it. Like, you need to be respectful. You need to follow certain rules. So like, I think it just gives you a total structure and base of like, that will set you up for success. It will definitely polish you up. Go to a company first.
Go work at a company. Have a boss for a little bit.
Not all of them are fun, but I've met great people. I've met great leaders and people that like have changed my life and that are also part of my life. There's people like that I have become really essential core friends that I have met at a company, designers and just creatives in general. So, you'll be surprised all the things you'll learn and find at a company.
Yeah, and building your network too, because those are the people who might hire you as a freelancer, or like you said, pass you on a good job. So these are things that I think sometimes get overlooked when people think like, oh, you're going to go work in-house. There's a lot of benefits to working in-house. Now, I want to talk more about your own creative practice aside from your amazing design career. What made you start your 36 Days of Type project? Because I feel like that was kind of fundamental for you, and I want to get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. I had this craving for being creative. I felt that I was not expressing all that I could do, or like showing all that I could do. So yeah, at that moment in time, I was working on an iPad project at Apple. So I got to play with the iPad Pro. I was like, oh my God, I have an iPad Pro, but it's not really mine, but it's mine. So at that point, I was like, I'm getting the hang of this. I kind of like this. At some point, I got my own, and doodling here and there, it got me to drawing letters more and more. And I started seeing the work of other people. So I was trying to fit into a mold. I think I was trying to do stereotypical pretty type that is flourishy, and it's like thin lines, very perfect, very polished. And I was like, I love this. I love seeing it more than I love doing it. I can appreciate it. It was painful to have to do all the work that you have to do in that way. And I think, the basics are essential and important to learn, but it is not what I wanted to do because it was very painful for me. So I was, I think at that point I was just starting to kind of develop a style and kind of falling into where I wanted to go. And I think social media gave me the confidence of being like, this is cool. As people started liking my stuff, I kind of kept diving into it deeper. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting confidence. I feel good about my work. If you scroll all the way down to my page, there is some line work type, but it was very thick type, big, bold type. It was very similar to stuff that I did when I painted that mural in high school. So I was like, I'm going back to my roots. I had seen people do the 36 days of type, but I was like, I'm never going to do that. Like, I'm not going to have time, or like, I'm not going to like devote all this time to this because it's not part of my work. It's not part of my job. But at some point I was like, if I want to keep developing this lettering artist world vibe lifestyle for me, I should practice and I should just explore what I want. So I think in this point I was like, I'm going to do this. And the pandemic hit. So I was like, I have some sort of time and, I'm going to do this for myself. And if you see the first letter of my first 36 days of type, it's pretty basic. It's pretty like, it's not super blended. It's not like super crafted, but I like the major vibe of the letter. So that kind of was like, I think I'm getting into something. And as you see the rest of the letters, the black and white letters, you kind of see that my style changes, and I was like doing different things here and there. But I was like, you know what? I'm having fun. This is like really cool for me because I'm doing something that I feel proud of.
Yeah. Outside of your full-time work.
Outside of my full-time work. So I was like, you know what? I'm getting the hang of this. I really like this. 2 days, they like highlighted me on their page. So I was like, oh my God, I think I'm doing something right.
Right. I'm onto something.
I'm onto something. And people are liking it. So I was like, that was definitely a big boost of confidence, especially for me, like starting out back then. The rest is history.
Would you say that before the 36 Days of Type project, type was an interest, but maybe not a strength? And then once you did the project, it was more of a confident like strength of having your own style in it? Or do you feel like you were always great at it? I mean, you were in a sense because you did the project, right?
I think when I started, I knew I liked type, but I knew I also liked illustration, but more type. Just because I didn't really know how to draw, like realistically or like proportionally and whatnot. So I would rather just like distort everything just so it's my style. So I think I did a little bit here and there, but I think when I did 36 Days of Type, it made me feel like I found my style. Or like not necessarily a style because I don't want to call it a style. I found my vibe, my groove. Like this is what I like doing. And
you found your eye.
I found my eyes.
Right? Like your taste for it.
Yeah, I was like, I like this vibe that I'm going into. And I think I'm very proud of my first set of letters because it was just an awakening for me.
Exactly. And that's the amazing thing is that you went to school, you worked in design for, still you had this long career, but it wasn't until you did this project that you kind of got your own vision and vibe for typography in a way that you wanted outside of like the corporate structure and what you have to do. Yeah,
like I was doing stuff that I wanted and like I did it for myself. I didn't do it for anyone else. So I was like, you know what? I'm happy.
And pushing your skills for yourself, because before this project, you were pushing your skills for your work, for the brands that you worked for, that kind of thing. It's a different exploration than when you do it for yourself.
Yeah, I felt that a lot of things, when you work at a company, there are projects that live on and go out into the world, but there's also many other projects that don't go out into the world especially when you're working at an agency, there are things that you pour your heart and soul into it and it may not ever come out.
And they never see the light of day, right?
They never see the light of day. And that was getting on me. I was like, I am spending so many hours. I'm giving my life for this company and all this work. And it died. And I can never show it to the world. And then it became like, what am I showing on my portfolio? Like, I am wasting my days here. So then I was like, I need to do something for myself. Like that's when the itch of doing something for myself was like, I was like, I need to.
It was overcoming you.
Yeah, it was like it was all clashing together. And
yeah. And it came to this perfect moment where you did this project. So what would you say came out of that project? Because I feel like aside from creative confidence, it must have led to other things. So what do you think that was?
I think that first set of letters that I did, it didn't really maybe get me anywhere, to be honest. It just maybe got me some followers, which was good. And just for my confidence and whatnot, and for my ego. I think once I did my second round of letters, that's when I started getting people to contact me. When I added color to them. Or like when I created this new set, which it's similar, but I think it's very, I love this second set of letters.
It's more refined, maybe?
Yeah, it's more refined. I wanted them to feel like sculptures, or sort of like, my first initial thought for them was like, oh, I want them to feel like ceramic, or like, I want them to feel like organic, or like something that you would find in some civilization in long time ago. And it just kind of evolved into what it is. I'm also kind of colorblind, which people wouldn't expect.
You should put that in your bio, colorblind lettering artist.
I didn't want for it to become a thing as a designer, and people would not want to hire me for it. So I never really speak about it. But I think it's also part of me, and also just what it is.
I think it's a strength. I definitely think it makes the way you look at things more unique.
Yeah, thanks. So that's why I usually work with very bright colors and very bold colors, because the moment they're bright and bold, I can differentiate them, and that's easier for me to understand. Once I start getting into muddier nudes or like earthy tones and all that stuff, I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what color it is. So it would be like very hard for me to like start matching and whatnot. So that's why my first series was in black and white, because I was afraid of going in color. Once I was like feeling more confident, I was like, I feel I can do color, but let me go with my colors. I'm not going to try to go with very pretty colors. I'm just going to go with what colors I feel comfortable with. And that's what I went with, very bright colors, which I love. And yeah, it just kind of all came together, and it was the most fun and most stressed I've been. But it was really fun to work on them.
And they look amazing. They look great. And, obviously, quote, you can't tell that you're colorblind. I mean, you never can, right? Who knows? But I think it's a strength because it made you use stronger colors that kind of put your own stamp on it and your own literal vision onto it. So I think that's really cool. And what ended up coming of that project? Because I think a lot of things did. You've been building on each set.
Yeah. Something I also wanted to mention is that, colorblind doesn't mean that you can't do things. It just means that you're going to do them differently. And that is okay. And that is valid. I think at some point I was unsure about myself, or unsure about like what I was going to put out there, if it was going to be liked. But I was like, you know what? It's going to be me. Like, match or it doesn't match, like whatever. I'm going to do it. I don't care. It's been working out so far. I think the first project that came out of that one, can't even remember.
Or what about the biggest one?
The biggest one so far, I think, has been the Amazon project. I got to work with Amazon for their 2022 Pride campaign. It was an international campaign where we were celebrating queer love and just being a little daring and being a little bit more just out there. And it was probably like one of the most fun projects I've worked on.
I just love hearing this because it's like this personal project of yours, the 36 days of type, and you did the second round, refining even further the first set. And then this huge client campaign comes from it. Not that that's everyone's dream, because, everyone has different dreams, but that just goes to show the power of a personal project and of honing in your own vision. And that's kind of what I was getting at here, was like, this story of just like personal development, personal project, and then boom, this huge international campaign. And how did it feel seeing your work out in Times Square? Because I know it was up there.
I kind of cried when I first saw it. I got emotional. It was like, I am from this little island, and oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional now. I'm from this little island, and it's the power of a dream, the power of wanting to better yourself, the power of like believing in yourself, even if you're the only one who believes in that. And, sometimes you just have to do things and surprise yourself. And then you don't know what may come out of it. Out of this project, a lot of things came out of it. A lot of people have reached out just because they like my work. It felt validating when I did these letters, and I didn't even know like that was going to come out of it. I think that project taught me to, post whatever you want, post whatever feels you up, because out of that, people are going to gravitate to you for some reason or another, and you don't know what may come out of it. I think, I've done things, and there are things coming up. So I'm excited for where things are going.
I just love hearing this. My heart is warmed hearing this. So I'm just so happy we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard trying to manage your work and trying to manage another load of work on top of that. Sometimes my social life and my personal life are non-existent just because I'm working, but I'm still like proud because I'm like doing stuff I want to do.
No, I get that. I mean, it comes at a cost, but you are willing to put it in, and you think it's worth it. So then that means it's worth it for you until a point where maybe you switch it up, and who knows. Something I wanted to ask you about your type, and the type that you did for the last set of the 36 Days of Type project, and you did for Amazon. Kind of similar. How are you creating this type? Because it looks really 3D and dimensional. So I'm wondering if you're using any sort of modeling software, or if you are drawing them yourself, because there is this curiosity behind it, just because it's so pretty and so voluminous.
I didn't think they looked 3D, to be honest. I know they look kind of 3D, but I didn't expect for people to think that I was like doing it with like a software. I was like, I'm just doing this in Procreate. This is just a brush. This is just basic highlight and shadows.
I just love that so much, because I think people assume, because you can do it, I'm sure, that way if you wanted to, if somebody wanted to. And I just love that you just went with what you knew. I don't know how familiar you are with modeling software or something like that, but I'm so impressed that you were able to do this in Procreate or using whatever other apps, because it looks so like slick,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like, it takes time. I've seen people trying to copy what I've done, and I can see that they didn't spend enough time. Because it takes time to get it to look smooth.
But smooth and also texturized at the same time.
Yeah, smooth and texturized is kind of tricky. Because once you like shrink the brush, it kind of gives it different texture. So there's a lot of balance. There's a lot of things that you need to balance. But yeah, I've seen people do things that are not that great.
That's for all you copycats out there.
All copycats.
Well, the cool thing about having copycats is that they don't know what you have next, and they don't have your your taste. They can't copy that. They're copying the last thing you did. They don't know the next move and they don't know how to do it as good as you. So who cares about them? But I just love that you're doing it like handmade. It feels very handmade. And speaking of handmade, you've also been exploring more tactile lettering, like outside of digital period. So what do you think is calling you to make this type physically? Because that's a whole other level. It's a whole other experience. So why do you want to go there?
I love art. I think it's great and I want to be surrounded by it. I think it's a shame that we make so many great things, but they just stay digitally. Like I love seeing work that it's in your face and like just big and taking up space. So I think I want to be that. I want to take space. Not be ashamed of me, of myself. I don't know. Someday, at least, I would love to be in a museum or just galleries and whatnot. I want my work to not just be seen, but also felt. So that's why I've been working on more physical stuff. Also, like, your computer is not always going to be on, so like you can't see the work always. So I just wanted to bring it to life in a way. And there's a lot of things that that I've been exploring and that I want to keep exploring. Illustration and type. And I kind of want to keep marrying those two worlds together. So I've been working hard on like trying to kind of build this little Don Carlos world.
Definitely. And I can see it too on your Instagram. You've been posting more characters and stuff like that. So I know that there's a whole world that's going to be coming soon. I'm sure you're working on it. Speaking about taking up space, you're a queer Afro-Latinx artist. And I think that's amazing and so special. And I know you worked on this LGBTQ plus themed sticker pack that you made in collaboration with a bunch of other illustrators. So how do you feel about making art about your identity as a queer artist? Is it important to your work? Is it an undertone?
I think, I don't want that to be the only thing people know about me or see about me. But I think it is important to put it out there. I grew up in a Christian school. Like that was like what I grew up in all my life. All my life, I heard that I was just going to hell. I heard that what I was not necessarily correct. And all of these things I kept bottled inside myself for a long time. So I think it is very important for me to be some sort of representation that it is okay, it is valid, it's powerful to be yourself, and it is very important to be okay with yourself inside, because if not, it will eat you up. So I think for me, it's important to be some sort of representation for all those out there that may be afraid, that don't see this representation often. And, I think when you follow people online, or like the people you follow online, it's a very niche space of who you want to see. I may be bright and loud and whatever, but doesn't mean that always everyone's gonna see it. So I think it's just important to be out there, because you don't know who you may impact.
Yeah. And you have this one Instagram post, which is also art, but it says woke up gay again, I think. And I just love it because I hope that there is, maybe someone who really needed to hear that message and really needed to be empowered. And so I really like that you're putting that into your work. You're putting that into your type. I'm sure you're putting that into your illustrations. And like you said, it can reach people and you never know who needs to hear that message that day.
Yeah, for sure. I want to appeal to everyone. But I also wanted to do what I want to do. But I also want to make sure all the little people out there are living their authentic life.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool too that your work has these influences, right? Because it's you, but it's amazing too that you worked with Amazon for a Pride campaign, not just like, let's say a Christmas campaign or a summer campaign, something more like whatever. It was for this. And I just think it's really goes to show that like putting your own stamp on thing, speaking what you have to say, being your authentic self, like it can get you places beyond just self-satisfaction, right? Like obviously it comes with that, but now you're representing it on a bigger scale, and that's just cool.
Yeah, and sometimes people like deny like their culture. They just want to like be something else. So I think just embracing my Puerto Rican culture, my Latin culture, also just being queer. I think it's empowering. It's cool.
It's cool. I couldn't agree more. It's cool. Reduce it down to that. My last final questions for you now, Don Carlos, these are quick ones here. Do you have a favorite Puerto Rican phrase or saying that you want to share with us today?
That can be said out loud. No, I'm kidding. I like the word sinvergüenza. It's kind of taken me places. It's helped me be like sinvergüenza and do whatever I want. I actually got it. I even got it tattooed.
Oh my gosh. So you couldn't think of it and it was right there, literally on you. Yeah. That is so sick. Yeah, I think people could associate that with like a negative connotation, and you're just being like, yeah, I'm shameless. I'm going to do whatever I want. That's beautiful.
For sure.
And then your favorite Puerto Rican food?
Oh my God, mofongo, for sure. Mofongo, if you haven't had it, it's like mashed plantains, and it's built in like a little dome. I usually get a bifongo, which means that it has savory plantains and also sweet plantains. And it has like little chicharrones sometimes. And it's kind of garlicky and like savory. And since it has a sweet plantain, it's a little bit soft too. So it's like so bomb. And it could be with any topping. It could be chicken, shrimp, pork, whatever. I know it's always going to be good.
Damn, you're salivating right now.
That is my favorite food.
I love it. And then is there anything about Puerto Rican culture or like a tradition that you wish was more well known in the US or we did here?
I think people should hug and kiss more. I think I miss, when I'm back home, I hug when I meet someone. I want to hug them. I want to kiss them, and we can get on with our day. And it feels like we're a little bit warm. I feel like sometimes here in the U.S., when I meet someone, it's like very awkward because sometimes they don't even handshake. So it's like, what do? I guess I'll just say hi and continue. So it's just very awkward for me. I feel like if I'm with someone and I like enjoy their presence, like why not? So yeah,
you are so right. You are so right. No one has said that on the show so far, and that is like a big one because those intros and outros are really important, and they're so much more warm. You're totally right. You're totally right. Well, Carlos, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for giving me your time, for sharing about your career, about your personal projects, about being colorblind. Thank you so much for sharing all of this on the show. And nothing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great talking to you.
Okay, everyone, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with lettering artist and designer Carlos Oliveras Colom. Be sure to follow his work on Instagram at Don Carlos. That's Don Carlos with 3 R's. But I'll also leave a link in the show notes so you can just click that. Before you go, remember to hit subscribe or share this episode with a friend. Those are 2 very free things you can do to support the show, help the podcast grow, help me continue making it for you. It's super easy. Now, if you want to listen to a personal podcast from me about what I'm up to in my career, or listen to extended episodes of this show that are like an extra 30 minutes long with all the juicy little details, go ahead and check out the Patreon at patreon.com/drawsinspanish. Lastly, remember to join the Discord if you want to connect with other listeners. Just go to drawsinspanish.com/chat to join. That's all I have for you. Hasta la próxima. Nos vemos el próximo martes, amigos. Ciao.